Shout out to the exhausted educator.
This is a Holding On to Learning LLC production. Woo!
The ideas expressed on this show are not the views of their employer. Besides, if you really want to take advice from this guy, well, you should probably do it at your own risk.
You're gonna love the exhausted educator.
Class is in session. Here's the short bald dude from the Exhausted Educator Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's an absolute pleasure, to be honest with you, an absolute honor to have Dr. Michael Gurian with us today, who I admire for all his amazing work. And I can't wait to get into some of this in our conversation today. Mike, thank you so much for jumping on with me.
Thank you, Kyle. It's an honor to be here.
Could you just kind of summarize for everybody, in case they aren't sure of in case they haven't heard of your work before, where you were at, decades ago when you started your work to all the way up to what you're doing now?
Yeah. I started getting a sense of what I was going to do by back in college and grad school. Back then, this is in the 70s and 80s, the conversation, if sex or gender or anything, boy, girl, anything came up, it was everything socialized, right? I mean, and it's actually a lot of people still are saying that now, but everything's socialized. But I had lived overseas. My parents were academics and also in the Foreign Service. And I had lived overseas. And even when I didn't speak the language, the boys were playing with boys immediately, right? And girls were playing with girls immediately. So I knew there was something going on, but we didn't have scans yet. So brain scans. So I was just kind of putting things together. Starting in the late 80s, early 90s, brain scans became available. So now we can look at scans of male and female brains and see how differently they operate. So I started developing theory around that. And as you know, that got into various places: corporate, parenting, education, psychology. And so probably connected to what we're doing today is education. So about 25 years ago, the Gurian Institute formed, in which we train trainers to take, all of this research and all of these strategies and et cetera, and to take them into schools. And we did 2-year pilot at University of Missouri, Kansas City, 6 school districts. This is in the late 90s, and proved that if teachers and everyone in the community understand how boys and girls learn differently, that test scores go up for both boys and girls, grades go up for both boys and girls, discipline referrals go down, violence goes down, so bullying goes down, so that's kind of where my devotion is in the education sphere. And we're still doing that. The Gurian Institute is still operating and quite a bit and doing a lot of that work.
And you're doing amazing work. And as I said prior to officially recording here, is that, I can't thank you enough for your work, because it led me, as somebody who wanted to be able to provide information to staff, or now at the district level, about working with boys and best practices and working with boys. You had really given me some things to think about that I hadn't thought about before, whether it be brain-oriented kinds of material and content that you provided, but also you kind of gave me some verbiage and vocabulary around some of the things that I'd been thinking about, and I hadn't seen that before. So I wanted to thank you on the podcast for that. And also, before I jump in, I want to congratulate you, by the way. 32 books, is that right? 32 books? That's amazing.
Yeah, I have a writing disorder. I can't stop writing.
But
stop. That is over 30 some years, so it's not as bad as it sounds.
Right. Well, it's incredible though, and the things you push out are just amazing. And congratulations on your podcast, Wonder of Parenting, which is awesome. Wrapping over 4 years now.
Yeah, over 4 years, I think we're around 2 million downloads, around 20,000 downloads a week. So I think the word of mouth has spread. I think people I don't really know, truthfully, but I think people do like a brain-based approach.
Yep.
And we are very science-oriented and brain-based. So I didn't think it would last this long. When Tim Wright said, let's do this podcast, I said, oh, okay. What's a podcast? This is about 4 years ago, but it's really fun. And it's such a great way to reach people. As you know, from this wonderful podcast you have, it's a great way to reach people. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. In 4 years, that is something to not sneeze at, boy. It's impressive. And I love it, by the way. So for any parents out there, I'd highly suggest Wonder Parenting, and I'll put all of his information on podcast also with some links to books and so forth down in the show notes. So I did want to wish you congratulations on all those amazing feats. But I brought you on because I want to dive into working with boys. But before we get there, you've done so many amazing things in a variety of areas revolving around gender-based kinds of ideas. Could you just kind of dive in real quick about learning differences between boys and girls?
Yeah. This is probably a big thing. I'll give you like 4 or 5 that are huge that that because none of us are taught this in grad school, none of us see these brain scans in grad school, right? So we don't know, or undergrad or teacher certification. We're not taught this. There are all sorts of political reasons for that. So we're not taught that. So we don't know, like for instance, that multiple times per day, the male brain, the boys, their brains will go into a rest state. So if they're not moving around or stimulated, their brains go into a rest state, and most of the learning parts of the brain go completely blank. But the female brain has no similar rest state. So their brains are always active. And so that's a learning difference that's crucial. And it's why we, in our pilots and so on, we're always getting the teachers, okay, make sure you're moving around, teacher. Make sure the kids, who need it are moving around, brain break or whatever, every 20 minutes. Not the sit and get, because that's part of why boys are getting 70% of the D's and F's in our schools is the sit and get. Just sit here for 50 minutes. Not good. Going to lose 5 boys in a classroom of 25. So that, and then part of why the female brain is so active is that the female brain uses up to 10 times more white matter activity, and that's all through the myelin. So that's connecting dots everywhere in the brain. It's constant stimulation, one end of the brain to the other. Male brain operates out of 7 times more gray matter activity. Gray matter is in specific splotches. So the same task that males will do in one part of the brain, females might do in 5. And that's part of why we come to some different conclusions, but it's also why we gotta get that gray matter area stimulated in boys and realize they don't do as much white matter activity. And so this is something, especially at the elementary level, teachers have an aha about that, and they realize, oh my gosh, I have set up my classroom around the female brain. There's worksheets all the time. There's all this constant multitasking and all that. Well, boys can hardly even get organized, so we got to hit them in the gray matter area. And those are just a couple. I'll give a third one, which is the word use. Females do words on both sides of the brain and connect words to feelings and words to emotions, senses, colors, all those things on both sides of the brain. Males are mainly doing it on the left and mainly in the front left. So we have less connectivity for words than females do. So when teachers, especially in the younger grades, when they say, use your words, the boy does something that's sort of touch attachment or tactile, or he pushes someone really out of, it's how he's bonding. But we're not trained in this. So the teachers don't realize this, and they say, oh, no, don't do that. Use your words. And of course, boys are going to fail more at that because they don't have as much access to words. They are more kinesthetic and physical. So I would say those are 3 kind of large differences. Good.
Yeah. And very important ones too. Language development in boys in general seems to be a real challenge at all ages, to be honest with you, but definitely at the elementary level, boy, that it's a real challenge. Do you want to dive into maybe just some other general challenges that boys might face in school environments?
Yeah, well, let's look at the language. So the male brain is about a year and a half behind in the aggregate. So on average, about a year and a half behind the female brain in language acquisition, in word use and word production. It can be 2 to 3 years behind the female in organization. So so obviously words are a challenge. Males aren't reading as much. They're not doing as much of the homework at home, this word oriented. There's all sorts of stuff around words where they're underperforming. They're not writing as much. They're not writing with as much sensorial detail. They're getting worse grades. They're getting D's and F's in writing. And one of the things we discovered in our research is that if we give them visual stimulants, so like graphic organizers. So we train everyone in our groups. We're training and using graphic organizers because that's picture, and then have them draw before they write. Have them draw on a storyboard for half an hour before they write, because on the left side of the male brain they're doing words, but on the right side they're doing visual spatials, or what we call spatial mechanicals, visual graphics. So visual graphic is like seeing, right? Pictures, seeing it. And spatial mechanical is objects moving through space. So when a big learning challenge they have is that when a classroom is set up very much around words, and not set up to be kinesthetic, spatial, mechanical, visual, we're going to again lose a lot of guys, because what it means is they can't compete. Like 1 in 5 guys can compete with the average girl in the classroom in terms of word use. Guys like me who started reading at 4, it's definitely a strength area for me. I've written 32 books. So, but I'm the exception that proves the rule. I'm the 1 in 5 exception rate. So 4 out of 5 times, the guy is not going to compete well with girls in the aggregate, and he's not going to produce as many words, etc., unless we can help him get stimulated graphically and visually, or spatially, throwing an object back and forth, squeeze balls, that kind of thing, and or graphic organizers for organization, which are pictures, right? If we give him those, now some of these learning challenges we've dealt with. And if we consistently use these strategies, but if we don't, all those are learning challenges. Organization, word use, sensorial detail, all of that stuff, literacy, reading, writing become challenges for a lot of boys, not all, but for a lot.
Yeah, you've hit on a lot of really good things here. So obviously the importance of kinesthetic movement for boys is just, a huge piece of the puzzle. Do you have any other further advice from an educational standpoint for teachers or paraprofessionals who work with students or administrators? Just any general advice that you would offer up specific to working with boys besides what you've already shared?
Yeah, the most important thing, I can tell you, the most important thing is training, because the teachers are already really smart, right? Every teacher is really smart. Every para is really smart, right? They really are very, very smart. They're all very professional. What they haven't been given is training in male-female brain difference. And of course, what are we teaching but the brain, right? If we're in education, we're teaching the brain. Just like I'm also a therapist. What am I taking care of in my therapy office, right? I'm taking care of the brain. So I got to know about the brain. And what we have found is that when the teachers themselves get trained in nature, nurture, and culture, all the aspects of male development, female development, when they get trained in it, they themselves very smartly start redoing their classrooms. So people ask me, what's the most important thing? The most important thing is these people who are already professionals get training, and it just makes them better. And so, for instance, a lot of teachers will, and the training is, you can do some in a day, but it's generally like it goes on for a while, and you're checking back in with schools, and we do contracts where we're doing observation feedback and giving training, various visits and so on. And the data at the end of the year, is quite, it's on GurianInstitute.com. A lot of the school districts are right there. Their data is right there. What happens? And it happens because the teachers change things, and they realize that it's not a new curriculum. So they don't have to learn a new curriculum. All they're doing is they're getting aspects of teacher effectiveness that in some ways they intuited before, but they didn't have the science to implement, or they didn't have the support in the school, or in the family systems, the community, because the community needs to support these things too, the parents. They didn't have that before. Now they have it, and they get trained, and so they alter things, and they work in teams to alter things. The counselors get involved, and everything just in the school improves vastly. So that is, at least we can prove from a science-based standpoint, that's the thing that's most effective. Get them trained.
Yeah, and that obviously is a big focus of the Gurian Institute. Are you doing work also with on the girls' side as well? When we talk about learning differences, correct? You're doing a lot of work as far as working with girls too. Is that kind of embedded into your training?
Yeah, our training is generally, like if it's a boys' school, they just want the Helping Boys Thrive or Minds of Boys training. So obviously that's just on boys. But even that, we do comparative brain analysis to show how male and female brain differ. And most of our training is, of course, in co-ed spheres. And so it's Boys and Girls Learn Differently, or the Minds of Boys and Girls. Those are just two trademark titles for, these programs. And so we're going into female brain, male brain, everything. We're looking at, there are certain areas of like math science teachers, we really very young, we're helping them to alter the way they teach so that they're teaching these things to the female brain and understanding how female brain does things and how male brain does things. And so like girls only day in the block corner. This is a great illustration I think everyone will get. Let's say we're looking at second graders and we want to help, we're thinking girls in STEM, right? So we're thinking we want to help these girls to compete in these areas where we know male brain already competes really well, right? Like mechanical engineering, these sorts of things. Well, we need to give them a climate and an atmosphere to play with blocks, which are spatial objects, to play with blocks for a while without the boys there. Because when females play with blocks and males play with blocks, it's different. Males build up really fast and they knock them down and build up really fast. And girls do it slower. They tend to be more horizontal than vertical. They do it slower, but they build these really amazing structures. Well, if the guys are involved, the guys knock them down. They play. They're just like objects. They're knocking them down. But if the girls have girls only time for 15 minutes, half hour, then they get to focus on block play, which develops the spatials. And in order to be good at science later, especially engineering, architecture, you have to develop these spatials early. And so girls don't naturally develop them as early as boys do. And we want girls to do that. So we alter somewhat the way we teach to get that to happen. So that's an illustration of something there.
That's
girl
great.
drama is another one.
Right.
Anything having to do with girls and relationships, we do a lot of training in that because that, those are like the most asked questions.
Right.
And we have all the science on it. So, that's another one.
Speaking of like most asked questions, do you get asked about like boys' aggressive behavior quite often?
Yep.
And
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and that would, the term aggression nurturance is something that popped up. And when I was looking at a lot of your material, and I was like, well, I finally have like some verbiage to go along with something that I've been thinking about for quite some time. Yeah. Could you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah. We compare aggression nurturance to empathy nurturance or direct empathy nurturance. Sometimes these things are called challenge and coercive nurturance versus pro-social nurturance. So these are all different terms and I just use the terms aggression nurturance and empathy nurturance. So there's a part of the brain, the insula, is where mirror neurons happen. And when someone is being empathic to someone else, they have to have those mirror neurons flashing and they have to fill up, this insula fills up with these mirror neurons. Well, males and females are different in that way. Testosterone tends to kill off mirror neurons. So whereas oxytocin, which is a female dominant chemical, tends to build more mirror neurons. And so I realized, quite early on, about 30 years ago in classroom observations and therapy clients, I was initially doing observations, then I added the brain research on. It was very clear to me that males and females were both equally nurturing, but they nurture in different ways. And while there is crossover, obviously a female could use aggression nurturance, a boy could use empathy nurturance, of course that happens. But there are these biological patterns. So that's what I'm getting at with aggression nurturance. And when you see kids play a game, like 10-year-olds play a game and, one of them falls down, you're much more likely to see a girl, even if she's on the other side, right, not on this guy's team or this gal's team, to come over and say, are you okay? Do you need a Band-Aid? Because her mirror neurons fill up and oxytocin fills up, this bonding chemical, and she goes over, and that's empathy nurturance. You're more likely to see a guy, unless the fallen child is really, really hurt, in which everything will stop. But if the fallen child is not really hurt, you're likely to see a guy say, come on, get up, we need you. And he's not saying, boys don't cry or you wuss or whatever. That's not what he's saying. It's very wise leadership, actually. He's saying, get up, we need you. Because he's saying, your self-esteem is going to be better if you can be part of the team, if you can fulfill the goal, if you can be resilient, all of these, which are social emotional things we do want to teach kids, but he teaches it in his way with more aggression nurturance. Be more aggressive. Use the aggression game in which to develop yourself, because they're playing a game, flag football or whatever it is. Use the aggression game, be more aggressive. And I'll be more aggressive with you too. Get up, right? All that's aggressive, but it's really nurturing. And sometimes people will say, well, wait a minute, I don't think that's nurturing. And I'll say, well, okay, but think about this. What is one of our primary goals as adults to develop in our children? And resilience is a primary goal. That's a primary piece of social emotional development that we want to nurture. And males and females are both nurturing it in different ways, right? He's nurturing it in his way. She's nurturing resilience by saying, do you need anything? I'm going to get you a Band-Aid. You're going to feel better. You'll be more resilient. She's doing that. Absolutely. But so is he. And if that's our goal, if one of our goals is resilience, then aggression nurturance is really a great thing. And I have for a long time said, I think we don't understand, and I think every female teacher I've talked to agrees with this, will say, yeah, we as a female community don't understand aggression nurturance very well. And so we try to shut off things. So it's like pre-training and post-training. Pre-training, they report that they're shutting off stuff that's really what I would call aggression nurturance, like karate kicks on a playground, or knocking kids over, or bopping people in a line, or grabbing people and hugging them hard, and all that. That's all aggression nurturance. It's kinesthetic, it's tactile. It's what we call in the psych trade touch attachment, but it's more aggressive touch attachment, right? Than a lot of the teachers thought they wanted. Right. But after they go through this training, and then they notice, oh my gosh, look, the boys are doing better, and there's no harm to the girls, and they're not getting in trouble as much, and then they just really buy in, and they say, wow, this aggression nurturance, this is pretty good. But it takes some training, because the mindset is, well, that wasn't empathic, and that does harm. That will become violence. So that's why we have to stop them from touching or doing anything, because it'll be violence. And in fact, just the opposite is true. The more they learn the boundaries of aggression nurturance, the less likely they will be to become violent. Because violence is a disease. That's not aggression. That's violence. That's a different thing.
That's great stuff. It's great stuff. And it is a different outlook, I think, that so many educators need to hear. And I honestly believe, this is where I want to head next real quick, just parents in general, caregivers in general also need to be well aware. And I think you in general, you do some work with families as well. Thinking in terms of, getting boys ready for school, as we're going to push this out on our other podcast, the Parents Recharge Show, as well, for families. Do you have anything specific you would offer up for them as advice, getting your boys ready to head to school?
Yeah, I'm going to do this, give it in three angles. One angle is going to be for the parents and the parents of boys, because this is usually where the need comes in, to just really look at the school and see if people know in the school kind of some stuff about how boys learn, right? If that's even a conversation. That's number one. Number two, if it is, great. If it's not, then there's got to be a lot of talk from parents, including dads and everyone involved in extended family with these boys about, okay, you're going into a system that may not understand you. So, really pay attention to the rules, because you could get in trouble for A, B, and C. So really prepare them for what the boundaries are that are set. And then number three, when and if the boy, my son, starts to fail in that environment, then now these parents, go in and politely meet with the principal and the teachers, and this for like 5 or 10 parents of boys, and say, okay, look at this. Look what's happened here. This is a very smart guy. These are 5 really smart boys, but look, they're getting D's, and they're getting in this trouble. But look, they're really smart, and they're actually good guys. So can we get can we even fund some training for you all in this? And that's kind of the cycle, preparing with talk and to try to meet the rules. And then if these smart, intelligent, high character boys are not meeting the rules, then going in and trying to have an intervention in the school.
I love the idea of parents advocating for specific things that their children need in schools, and the idea of them advocating for learning systems or learning styles or brain-based systems of learning, because they know it would be more effective for their child. It just makes sense. Mike, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Your work is fantastic, and to be honest with you, you're a trailblazer, an absolute trailblazer. Oh. You got the ball rolling back in the 90s, and you've just continued it on through all of the amazing things that you've put out through the years. Can't thank you enough. If people want to connect with you or your group, the Gurian Institute, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, the easy thing there is GurianInstitute.com. So Gurian Institute.com, because that's kind of the mothership website. And a lot of other things connect to that website. For more on me personally, they can go to michaelgurian.com. The books are there. They can go on Amazon. The latest books are Saving Our Sons and The Minds of Girls. So those are the two latest with the science-based for parents, for teachers. And they're available sort of anywhere. But I think if they're going to start somewhere, start at GurianInstitute.com and then kind of look at all that.
That's great. And like I said before, we'll have a variety of his information down in the show notes, along with the Wonder of Parenting podcast, a link to that, so you can check that out too. Thanks again, Mike, for joining me. Awesome stuff from you.
Thanks.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kyle. Thanks, everyone.
Party time.
It's like, boom, boom, boom. Sirens are going off in my head. We're going to try to just not be horrible.
I'm watching you, exhausting educator. Always watching. Class is dismissed.